Declare the agenda briefing of Tuesday the 14th of July 2020 open. The time now, let's call it 6 p.m. We acknowledge the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of this land. We also pay our respects, of course, to elders, both past and present. Tonight's meeting is for the purpose of asking questions and seeking clarification on agenda items for the next ordinary council meeting, which is held next Tuesday. No decision making or entering into debate is to occur at this meeting. May I ask everybody present to please turn off electronic devices, mobile phones, iPads and tablets for the duration of this briefing session. Tonight's agenda briefing is being recorded and a copy of the audio recording shall be available on the City's website within 72 hours of the conclusion of this meeting. Agenda briefings are public meetings and any information you provide may be publicly accessible. At item 2, attendance, I'm pleased to see the full council here tonight. We have no apologies and there is no approved leave at item 2.2. At item 3, disclosures of interest, we have one from Councillor Kunza. CEO, I might get you to actually read that out.
Thank you, Mayor. There are actually 2 declarations. Councillor Barry is yet to submit his, but he's informed me he will submit his before I finish speaking. No pressure, Councillor. I have a declaration of impartiality from Councillor Kunza. It's in relation to item EN-016-20, page 67 on the agenda. The item details it's a request for a renaming of Riverton Pavilion. Nature of the association. Councillor Kunza is a junior life member of the Riverton Roos Junior Football Club and worked with the club's committee to progress the application for the renaming of the pavilion.
CEO, I might just pass over to, I'll give Councillor Barry a moment because I'm in exactly the same position. So what I might do, Graham, is just give you the opportunity to actually verbally provide your disclosure, and then you can provide that at the end of the meeting in writing if you like.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's in relation to SDO 1620. Report title would be Metro in Armidale, removals of crossings. It's an impartiality. The nature of the interest. I mean, it's an interest in common with a significant amount of other people within an area of land which is mentioned within the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Just myself, I'd like to make 2 declarations of impartiality. One is in relation to EN-016-20, page 67, the request for the renaming of Riverton Pavilion. I'm a former player at the Riverton Football Club. I haven't been associated with the club for many years, but I did kick the winning goal in the 1975 under-13s grand final, and I hardly ever mention that. But I did, and I've known Victor Araschetti for most of my life. The other item tonight is in regards to the Corinthian Park Tennis Club has an item up before us, and that's in relation to CCO 3320 CSRFF annual forward planning funding round of 2021 and 22. That does concern a number of entities, including the Corinthian Park Tennis Club, of which I am a member. No further disclosures. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Sorry, I also would like to declare impartiality, CC 033-20. I have a membership pending with Corinthian Park Tennis Club, and I've also provided some advice on grant fundings with respect to this application.
Thank you. I'll just ask governance if you wouldn't mind just making sure that perhaps myself and Councillor Spencer-Teo have, and Councillor Barry, I'll get yours collected if you like.
And I used to play for Riverton in 1969, but I think the statute of limitations...
I think you're right. I think you're right. Okay, thank you very much, councillors. We'll move on. Councillor Barry, for the sake of the record, has just passed his declaration to the CEO. Thank you very much. At item 4 tonight, we have public question time. Response to previous questions taken on notice. Responses to previous questions will be noted in the ordinary council meeting agenda, which will be published later this week, perhaps on Friday, I think. At item 4.2, question time for the public. The time set aside for public questions is 15 minutes, which may be extended if necessary. A question must relate to items listed on tonight's agenda paper. For recording purposes, please step forward, state your name and address, and then proceed to ask your question. If an answer cannot be provided at tonight's meeting, the question will be taken on notice and an answer will be provided at the next ordinary council meeting. In accordance with policy AD02, members of the public who have registered their interest to ask a question with the City's administration shall be called upon in the order in which registrations were received. Written questions will precede verbal questions. I'll open public question time now at 7 minutes past 6, so 6:07 p.m. Can I ask, after reading that very long preamble, are there actually any questions from the public gallery tonight? Sorry to waste your time, everyone. I close public question time at 6:07 p.m. and we move on. Deputations. At item 4.3 this evening, we have a deputation has been approved for Mr. Denzel Morrell, the President of the Corinthian Park Tennis Club. He's making a deputation regarding item CC 033 of 20, CSRF Annual Forward Planning Funding Round 2021 and 2022. Mr. Morrell, thank you. You've already stepped forward. You've got 10 minutes to make your deputation. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Mayor, councillors, thank you very much for providing an opportunity for us to present our club's project, which is court conversion and upgrade project, for your consideration. Sorry, not working. Oh no, that's right. Sorry, forgive me. Corinthian Park Tennis Club has been operating for more than 45 years, actually 47. And it was established in 1974 with 16 grass courts. It was founded by Mary and Alan Hicks through agreement with and lots of support from the City of Canning. And we really appreciate the support that's been given to the club over many, many years. Corinthian Park Tennis Club continues to be a very, very strong club and supports its members and a lot of the community by offering many opportunities for those people to play tennis and enjoy playing tennis. At least 20% of our current membership resides outside the City of Canning as well. Corinthian Club is a relatively strong club. It has about 270 members. Junior and young adult members only occupy a fairly small proportion of that membership. What we found is the general public are time poor and they prefer to play tennis when they want to play rather than be a club member and be tied to club functions and those sorts of things. Corinthian Park a few seasons ago went to electronic court hire, and we found that our number of hires during an annual period increased quite significantly, and consequently the revenue for the club did increase, and it enabled us to maintain our facilities to a better standard. Older club members need to have, because of their ageing joints and a bit of pain when they play on a hard surface, they need to have a cushioned surface. Grass provides that support, but a hard court doesn't. I guess our courts are hard. Well, some of our courts are a hard court, and they are of a substandard surface, and the poles and lighting need repair, replacement, that sort of thing. Corinthian has an obligation to provide a better facility for the community and also for its members. So the management committee and a majority of the members realise that Corinthian needs to provide alternate playing surfaces so that those parties can actually play tennis when they want to play, and they can play all year round, which we can't do at the moment. Just to give a location of Corinthian Park, so Corinthian Park borders on Beatrice Avenue and Leach Highway in Shelley. I guess I'll just briefly run through our project. So our project consists of, I probably should say, first off, anyway, I should go back. Sorry. Just to outline here, our facility consists of 15 grass courts located in here, 4 hard courts and 2 synthetic courts here, which make up our facility. The project itself that we wish to embark on will be to convert courts 14 and 15 located here from grass to a hard court, and that involves a revetment retaining wall running around here to build it up. We also have an existing issue, but we will have a new issue when these courts are done too with drainage. So in a storm event, we get ponding in these areas here. So the concept here would be to put soak wells under courts 14 and 15 and drainage system in here to cater for that, so that we can go and play tennis after a storm event and that sort of thing. So that's part of the project. Then we'd be looking at changing out poles and light fittings on these 4 courts here to LED lights and new poles. The city have replaced 2 of these poles because they were corroded and fatigued, and we thank the city for that. But the remaining 6 poles will need to be replaced in the near future. It will also provide a new power supply to these 2 new courts here, and poles and LED lights associated with that. And also fencing will be required to be repositioned and replaced and renewed in some cases to do this scope. I guess this scope was endorsed by the management committee, and they then requested a steering committee, or sorry, a subcommittee to pursue funding to assist in the funding of this project. Just a little bit about hard court surfaces. So, like I said earlier, we have 2 synthetic courts. Synthetic courts have a life of about 10 years, and then once the surface has deteriorated to an extent, the whole surface needs to be replaced. So you're up for a full capital cost of that surface, which is around $30,000 per court. If we go to what they call a gel or a matte cushion surface, they have in the middle layer of the surface, they have a cushion, which is about 17%. It's not as much cushion as a grass, but it's a modern equivalent to a grass court. The cushion, from all the information that I've seen, it doesn't deteriorate. However, the acrylic layer on the top will need to be refreshed because it starts to get a bit tardy after wear. And the cost of that is probably about somewhere around 8 or so % of the initial capital outlay. So it's quite reasonable, and that's every 10 years or so. These sorts of surfaces are supported by Tennis West, Tennis Australia, and they've been very successful in the United States as well. Okay. Just a little bit about the project costs. So the project cost that we're proposing here is just under $500,000. What's not included in that is that we have somebody who has volunteered to project manage this project, and the estimated cost for that would be around $32,500, which is not included in this. We're asking the city for just under $180,000, of which Corinthian Park will match that, and then we're looking at about $141,000 from Department of Sport and Rec. I guess what does this project achieve for us as a club and also from the community. So more courts available would be available for all year play. As I said earlier, it's something that we would like to be able to achieve not only for our own members but also for the community. The LED lights would provide a competition lighting level across the courts, and also it reduced the overall cost, power cost to the club as well. So significant saving in that of about 30% in what we currently pay. Reduction in the number of grass courts is in line with the City of Canning's objectives about reducing water usage as well, so there's a plus in that as well. Cushion surface, as I've said, allows older members to play longer and also to play all year round, which is a bonus not only for our members but also for the community. It's an attractive surface. To have 6 courts the same is very attractive for anyone hiring the courts. Social events where members and the community come down and do that. It opens the door for more competition play and that sort of thing available. Wheelchair access can be accessed across these cushion surfaces. There's not an issue with that at all. We, over the last 2 seasons as a club, we've sponsored 10 to 12 students from Clontarf Aboriginal College that have come and played. Our coach has taken on to promote tennis with these people, and that's another opportunity to be able to extend that going forward as well. To have 6 courts the same and that sort of thing, it's an attractive thing for Tennis West as a overspill for their competitions that they hold as well. And I guess it meets the requirement for the community as well as for the club, so it's really a win-win for everyone involved. So back to the council here. So Corinthian requests your support for this project to enable this facility to meet the needs of the community and also the members. And I guess we start to turn the clock back to how the club started in 1974 with a lot of assistance from Corinthian, and we're still a strong club today. And I think that's the club stood the time of test, or the test of time, sorry. So I'd just like to thank you for your interest in Corinthian Park and also for this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morrell. Thank you. Councillors, anyone have a question before we actually move on with the agenda? Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through you, is there any plans for rationalisation of the number of courts into the future? I mean, we've got still 21 courts. Does the club stay with 21, or will they need?
I think if they could have more, they'd probably have more. Mr. Morrell, there's no plans to reduce the number of courts, is there?
No, definitely not. That's all the real estate that we have, so we can only really move courts around, and I guess by doing these 2 courts, 14 and 15, we have enough real estate to push the other courts around a little bit to make room to actually do this.
Just to answer the question in some respect, only because I'm a member, on the weekends they're going to give you an idea, it's often the case that members are sitting off because they simply can't fit the number of people on the courts that they have with the number of members that they have. So yeah, I don't think they're looking at reducing the number. Just to provide some context, Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Your 2 hard courts you've got at the moment, what are they made of?
We've got four hard courts and 2 synthetic. So the 4 hard courts, they've just got an acrylic layer on the top of the asphalt.
And which one of those, you had 2 cushioned ones
synthetic.
Up there, which one are we doing, are you supporting?
We haven't really made a decision on that, mainly on the basis that we haven't gone to competitive tender. The products are quite similar. The gel surface is installed at East Fremantle Tennis Club. They've got 4 courts there. We've been and played on those, and we've had some of our older members play, and they've found them as equally supportive to their body as grass courts.
Do you know how much it's going to cost then? If you're applying for the grant with us and local government and everything else, how do you do that if you haven't got a quote?
Oh no, sorry, I've gone for quotes. So I've gone for budget quotes, exactly right. But I haven't actually gone out and said, we've got the money, now we want to spend it, let's have your best price. Right? Sorry.
Anyone else, councillors, before we move on? Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thanks very much for your presentation. I've only got one question. It's not. It's actually for the administration. I would have thought that I know you mentioned ponding and some of the drainage systems or the overflows with the drainage. I just question for the administration whether or not that would be something that would be covered in a maintenance plan over the years. Do we look at something like that? Would that fall under that category?
Director Adams. Yeah, we'll come back to that. So we'll move on from the deputation. We'll raise that. It'll be the first question answered. Thank you, Mr. Morrell. Very much appreciate you coming in. Councillors, at item 5, items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public. I'll bring forward CC 03320 CRF annual forward planning funding round 2021 and 22. It's the second report up for tonight, so I'm only bringing it forward one, but only because we've got members of Corinthian Park Tennis Club and perhaps other interested parties here. So sorry to do that to you, governance, but we'll bring that item forward. Reports of committee meetings, there are none at item 6. Reports at item 7, Chief Executive Officer reports of Mr. Arthur Kyron, there are none. At 7.2, Mr. Gary Adams, the Director of Canning Community and Commercial, and as mentioned, we'll be bringing forward CC 03320. The recommendation is on page 11 of tonight's agenda, councillors, and is hopefully on the screen in front of you now, which it is. Are there any questions in relation to that item? I'll get Director Adams to start with a response to the question posed by Councillor Sweeney.
So, of course, if requested, we would assist with any design works with regard to the courts that are installed, but in terms of maintenance, the maintenance is the responsibility of the club under the lease agreement.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer Teo.
I apologise in advance. I've got several questions. Okay, where should I start? With the original grant application that was applied for the Department of Sports and Rec, who applied for that? Was it the tennis club or was it the City of Canning?
Director Adams.
So it would have gone through the same process as what we're going through now, where the club applies for the CSRFF grants and it's required to come through council for approval and ranking. Would have gone through the same process as that.
So back when we did that, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, back when we did the first application, what was it? What was the priority given? Were there other applications in the same grant round?
Director.
I've got one of the staff at the back, Catherine Coyle, who's a grants officer. She'll be able to answer that for us.
Thank you. Just for the sake of the record, can you just identify yourself for the...
Hello, Catherine Coyle, Grants Officer. So Corinthian applied last year, went through the same process and they applied to for this grant. The feedback came back, they were priority number 1 from the city's point of view, but the feedback came back from the department that it wasn't as competitive as some of the other applications that went in at the time. We met with the department for feedback, and the feedback was that the priority was the 2 grass court conversions to hard courts and the upgraded surface and the LED lights. So you'll notice in the report that the funding allocation has slightly changed, and that's based on the department's feedback.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Sorry, I've got a few more. With respect to the other, not the tennis club, but the other, the Coker Park and Queen's Park Regional, where did the 170 members come from the soccer club? Where did that figure come from? Because in my research, there's only 2 teams playing for the Queen's Park Soccer Club, and I can't see how that equates to 170 members.
I'm not sure if that'll be able to be answered tonight, but Director?
I'll have to take that one on.
Next question.
I noticed also in the report that the cricket club and the soccer club were consulted. Why weren't the other 4 clubs consulted with respect to these upgrades at Queen's Park?
Director?
So again, I guess there has been only a short period between the time that the announcement was made that this project was going forward and the requirement to put in the grants application. So there may need to be some additional consultation throughout the process. However, Catherine may have some further information on that, I'm not sure.
Ms. Coyle?
Today is to do with Corinthian, but I can take details and liaise with the active spaces officers. Okay.
And these ones might need to be taken on notice. Apologies for not getting them in earlier, but what's the annual revenue generated from the clubs who use Coker Park?
That may need to be taken on notice, I would expect. Director?
I have to take that on notice.
Yes, that question will be taken on notice.
And how many, if any, and how much, if any, of the Coker Park users are contributing to the upgrades?
Director, just the club contribution?
As far as I'm aware, there is no club contribution for that one.
Councillor?
At the time of the Coker Park, I know this has been going on for years, but at the time of the Coker Park plans to upgrade, was any consideration given with the fact with the Queen's Park State Football Centre being that it's only 2.2 kilometres away and the main user of Coker Park is a soccer club?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The State Football Centre is purely the state centre of excellence for football in Western Australia. It isn't aiming to accommodate any small or local clubs. It may be the administration base for an A-League club or another, and also the base for the women's A-League team as well. It was not and is not to be designed to accommodate local clubs.
Any other last question? Yep.
So with item 27, the proposed scope of works is construction of 2 sports field, lighting and gender neutral change rooms. Who's that going to be for?
Director Bowe, the training grounds?
That relates to the potential community facility or sports facility change rooms on Manyana Park, not the State Football Centre. So there are a number of clubs that use Manyana Park for cricket and for football, including clubs that share Coker Park usage as well. The actual specification and scope for the building on that facility on a redeveloped Manyana Park hasn't been finalised as yet.
Would it be possible that the users of Coker Park would be more attracted to the Queen's Park development rather than Coker Park, given its size, its bigger facilities, things like that? I'm just trying to justify spending almost $2 million on 2 facilities that are so close that have the same things on them.
Director Bowe?
Certainly that was considered a while back when the proposal to upgrade the change rooms at Coker Park was first mooted, probably 9 or 12 months ago. But as I said, the scope for the Manyana Park redevelopment and any club room redevelopment on that site is a number of years away. and certainly the clubs haven't been engaged about relocating to a new facility. The main focus for the city has been to enable the State Football Centre through the Queen's Park Open Space development and the project definition and the project scoping of that part of it. The real work on a building and what that will accommodate hasn't been entertained as yet. The city's contribution for the Queen's Park Open Space will purely be on the playing fields. That will be the transition from the State Football Centre in the north and incorporate the Manana playing fields to the south. So no real work has been done on the building as yet.
Thank you, Director Bowe. Councillor Ponaturai.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have actually visited the Coco Park a number of times, and youth playing and multicultural communities playing there. And can someone tell me the Coco Park is the oldest club in City of Canning? I would like to confirm that. Thank you.
Yeah, which club are you referring to? Director? No idea.
Oh, no, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Coco Park isn't the club. It's the facility.
Sorry, I mean the Coco Park, the facility. Is that one of the oldest soccer club in City of Canning? Am I right? Can somebody confirm that? Thank you.
I couldn't answer that, Mr. Mayor. I'll take it on notice and provide some feedback to the council.
Roger. Thank you for that. We'll take that on notice, Councillor. Thank you very much. Any other questions, councillors, before we move on? Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now some probing questions. Just in relation to the Corinthian Park Tennis Club, is the whole thing dependent on the department giving a third grant? And if not, what contingency plans are in place?
Director.
So yes, obviously the project at this stage is contingent on the grant being received. Obviously, if they're unsuccessful in the grant, then we'd be looking to work with them on a reduced scope or a further grant application to find the rest of the money.
Councillor Barry. Just your microphone, Councillor Barry.
A question in relation to funding. Why was there no consultation? Am I right in saying that it was just a short time frame that you didn't have a chance to speak to all the other member clubs?
I think that was
correct?
the earlier answer, I think. Director?
Sorry, I'll just clarify. I thought the question for that one was why hadn't we talked to some of the clubs who were considering using Queen's Park Regional Open Space. So that's why I responded in that manner. I now realise that you're asking me about Coco Park. Yeah, so no, that wasn't an answer that was relevant to Coco Park. It was relevant to Queen's Park Regional Open Space project.
Okay, and the last question would be, and given that it is such a popular club, are we able to ascertain over the last 15 years the amount of money that the city has put into the Corinthian Tennis Park, as well the proportion of contributions from the club to those, including grants? If you wouldn't mind
I'd
taking
expect
that
that would need to be taken on notice.
Yes,
if you wouldn't
yeah,
mind.
fine. Thank
Director,
you.
we'll take that on notice.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, councillors, before we move on? Councillor Kunza.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to the second priority, Queen's Park Regional Open Space, haven't we just last month gone out to public consultation on the master plan of that entire precinct? So why are we already putting a grant application in?
Director?
To assist in the development and the design of the outcome, to assist in the development of the design of the broader regional open space redevelopment, Councillor Kunza. So what we're asking the community at the moment is for the area of the Queen's Park open space that they can influence the level of facilities and the type of facilities and what they would like to see there. We want to get ahead with having some money allocated in the budget to enable the progress of the design.
Councillor Kunza? Yep.
Just with respect, last August, the Corinthian Park Tennis Club was the first priority, and now they're number 3 behind a plan that's just gone to public consultation. One of the points under the criteria was project readiness. I mean, this is a project that's well advanced, and I'm just surprised that it's put in terms of priorities ahead. When I look at all the criteria, they all, I'd imagine, all rank very well in terms of A, B, C to G. I'm just wondering how whilst it's been in the plans for a long time, it was only endorsed last month, has then deemed more a higher priority by the city.
Director Bowe, is there a reason?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So whilst the city only formally endorsed progressing and supporting the project last month, it's had probably 18 months of gestation time and significant support from both the federal and state government. So in terms of readiness, whilst the actual feedback from the community consultation hasn't been ascertained yet, once we obtain that, we will need money to progress the detailed or the concept and the detailed design of the broader redevelopment of the open space.
Thank you. Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just clarification again. I think the officer said that did it go to the department last year and was found wanting for some reason, and now that was when it was a priority 1, I believe. Is that the case? And now, if it didn't make the grade, we've rejigged so that it does fit the criteria. Is that correct or not?
Ms. Coyle, there might be an answer best given by yourself. Just step forward and just put the other microphones on. Thank you.
They submitted the application last year and it was priority 1, but the feedback from the department was that it was actually a very competitive round. During that time, they were prioritising club changing rooms and female participation. However, when Corinthian Club and myself met with the department, their advice was that the project was very competitive. However, they wanted to look at a reallocation of the funding split, and so they consider the maintenance element of courts 3, 4, 5 and 6 as not a high priority. So therefore the difference in the funding split is the upgrade surface, which will take that club to that next level. So that was their feedback on that.
Thank you. Councillor Barry?
So from that feedback, was that a yes or a no for?
So the feedback was that they supported it, but it was, they support the project. However, they had a hugely competitive round, but their advice was to come back to them with the same project with a slightly different funding split. Come back now for funding next year. Yeah, so we have to get into this deadline in September for funding in the following financial year.
Can I just ask a question? And that was a good question by Councillor Barry. Did I hear right? You said that one of the reasons why it failed was at that time the department was favouring projects more around change rooms and specifically female change rooms for female sport?
Yeah, that's correct. So their priorities do include surfacing and floodlighting, but because there was a push at the time around female participation, the feedback from once they'd approved the grants was that was what their priority was. They just didn't have enough funds to cover all of the projects, but they sat down with the club and myself and said that this project was a good proposal and we should put it back to them.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cole. Very much appreciated. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Would it be possible to get some rationale around, just further on to what Councillor Quinzer said, as to why this has gone from a priority 1 to a priority 3? My line of thinking here is, here's a club who's contributing $180,000 to an important upgrade. They've got drainage issues, which in my mind would kind of be, well, those courts aren't fit for purpose if they're flooding. The grant got knocked back because of the drainage issues. They thought that, you know, the grant doesn't qualify for that. So I'm just really struggling to get my head around. Someone comes to us with we're not asking for the full amount of funding, yet we give them a priority 3 when last round they were priority 1. So if I could just get
Director
some.
Lowe, could we, I know that you answered the question to the best of your ability. Are we able to provide a little bit more context around the way that those priorities are arrived
Thanks,
at?
Mr. Mayor. There was a council resolution in February this year which said that council ensures Coker Park club room and change rooms are the first priority for the large grants around 2020. But I think Director Adams has some more information.
Sorry, that would have been before we got the answer on Corinthian Park Tennis Club, wouldn't it? Or we already got the rejection of that.
Director Adams.
So we would have already had the rejection on that one. However, I guess it's worth noting that there's 2 grant rounds. One is a small grant round, which is the annual grant, which is the one that Corinthian Tennis Club's in, and the other 2 are the forward planning ones, which are the much larger ones. So the 2 that are in the forward planning grant are the bigger ones, which is over 500,000.
Yeah,
Catherine can probably...
Yeah, just to clarify, the round in February is the small grant round, and that's up to 300,000. So all of these projects wouldn't have qualified for that.
But sorry if I can just clarify, but when the DLGSC wants you to prioritise, you've got to prioritise all 3, not 1, 2, and then 1.
Director?
Yep, I queried the same thing when we when this report came for review, and we've checked, and this is how they wanted it prioritised: 1, 2, and 3. Even though the annual grant is a different grant to the other 2.
Just have to accept that that's the process, I think, at the moment. We might, Councillor Holland.
Just a question. Are these grants, they're not in competition to each other anyway, are they? One's a forward planning grant, one's an annual plan. It's a different process and a different pot of money. Is that correct or not?
Director Adams.
Ask Catherine.
Just your microphone. Oh, could I get the microphone turned on? Thank you.
It's the same pot of money. The department look at the ranking from the council. They don't. They take it into consideration, but if they feel that another project is better suited against their priorities, they will support that. So even though there is the ranking, they will look at the projects and how they the support in terms of the club coming forward. So they take into account the ranking, but that's not concrete for them.
Thank you. Councillors, we might move on if you've got any further questions in relation to... Councillor, is this something you really... Councillor Ponaturo, you've got a question you need to ask?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it is relevant to this agenda item. I'm sure everybody else asked a number of questions. Just I would like to know from the directors, maybe through you to the directors, between the different clubs, because what sort of age, because we've been highly promoting the women's league in football and other number of clubs locally too, but what age of group of people play, for example, in the Corinthian Tennis Park or people using Coco Park Soccer Club? So are we able to get some answers? Because that's also fairly important. If the youth are more getting out and playing, that is very, very important to keep them safe. So if they can...
So you're asking for like a split on gender and age?
More than the gender at the moment, I would like to know average age using the facilities, but that's also maybe become important for us. Thank you.
Are our community officers able to provide that level of detail? Director, are we able to try and get hold of that?
I guess when you're talking change room facilities, they're generally more utilised by adults than they are by the lower age groups, although obviously, you know, when you get to teenagers, you tend to use the change rooms more. But I guess, you know, it's pretty difficult for us to give a complete breakdown without going to the clubs and finding out exactly what teams they've got and what the gender makeup is of each of those teams. I guess what we do know is that the Coco Park change rooms are in a state of where they're not, you know, up to the standard that the clubs would like, nor would the city like them to be. They require the upgrade, and I guess you know, in order to cope with the gender, the change in gender that we know are using these type of facilities, that they do need to be done differently to how they were first designed. So, you know, there has been a change in genders, and that's what a lot of this grant money goes towards, is to making sure that the change rooms cater for both genders.
Thank you, everyone. Does that answer your question, though, councillors? Are you okay with that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but I'm sure the clubs will be willing to give us some of the information if you want to do, because we are doing some work for them. And if I'm visiting around, I'll probably find out some form of information out of curiosity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ponaturai. Councillors, we'll move on now to, we'll move back one step to CC 032 of 20, Local Recovery Coordination Group. That item is on page 3 of tonight's agenda. And is also now on the board in front of you all. Does anyone have a question in relation to that item? Councillor Barry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given this was a point of discussion, I think late last week, there was a possible alternate motion. Is that going to be included in the OCM agenda, or are we just going to leave it up to?
Might have to get some guidance from governance on that. That might be a question best answered on notice. So you're saying proposing an alternate motion?
Well, last week we were looking for direction as to where this was going to go on a possible alternate motion. I think I'm not sure whether it was Mr. Adams.
Yes, Mr. Adams. Mr. Adams, have you got an answer to that question?
Yeah, so we'll provide some direction to council via memo as to what the options are for dealing with this matter, given that it was adjourned from a previous council meeting. So we'll provide that to councillors in between now and the OCM.
Thank you, councillors. So we will then move on to CC 034 of 20, the monthly financial report of June 2020. Are there any questions in relation to the financial report? No questions? No, I was just waiting for you to jump out of your chair, Councillor Barry. Councillor Barry, go ahead. Did you want to move to Councillor Kunza then? Councillor Kunza? You don't have one? You can't find yours? Councillor Barry, do you want to do your best to bumble through it?
Yes. Don't worry about that. Page 18, Freight and Logistics Council of WA 12311. That's the customer number. 55k. I'm just wondering what that was for.
Are you happy to take these on notice, Councillor Barry?
Yes, as long as I get an answer before the OCM, if that's possible.
Yeah, I'm certain that you will. Yep.
Page
just
19.
Get you to speak slowly so we can write those down. Yep.
Yeah, page 19, number 10369, Homewood Consultancy. I mean, I think it's something arboreal. I mean, I had a quick look on the Google it, but it was in New South Wales and Victoria, so I'm not quite sure how that applies to us. Strata, page 22, 10755, City of South Perth, 79,000. Page 22, 11445, Environmental Industries, 546k. I'm assuming that will be the Wharf Street Basin. So,
do we know that one off the top of our head, Director Bowe? Is that for the Wharf Street Basin?
Yes, that will be for the Wharf Street Basin, Mr. Mayor.
Are you okay with that answer,
Yeah.
Councillor Barry?
Yep. That's really just clarifying it. Thank you. I noticed there's a couple of checks for, and not the numbers, but you know they're easily you can find them. Element 47 and Thompson Gear. I believe that could be in relation to the Kennington Leisureplex, and the question then would be, with those checks, how far away are we from a final report as to that problem? Page 25, Newfum Proprietary Limited, 12172, office furniture. Couldn't find that. Got some Chinese writing, that was all. Page 25, 12327, Creating Communities, 33,000. I'm just wanting to know, is that part of the Connect Canning? Yes?
Yes, that was part of that project.
Yeah, if we can just have an explanation as to what that was for, because the website doesn't tell me much. And with the resilient grants, is it just one per club?
Was it one per club or different categories of grants? Director?
Is it, well, that's the other
I'll
question.
ask.
Is there different categories?
I'll ask
Yeah, there's-
Director.
I've got
Dr. McQuaid.
I've got Dr. McQuaid has run across to the lectern. Dr. McQuaid?
So yes, there were two categories, the small grant and the digital grant. Clubs could apply for both, but they were only eligible to receive, so they could receive funding under both categories, but obviously only for one under each category. So they could apply for digital and they could apply for small, and they could receive both.
So essentially the ones that I was looking at who got two were eligible for two.
Yes, they were.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
Two
thank
different
you.
categories, open to all.
And just another question. So that's all finished now? I mean, because if it's going to come up again, I'd like the opportunity to know that so I can get out amongst my crew in Mason Ward and they can apply for it.
So that round's finished, but we have, council did give us the direction in the budget workshop to continue with a form of resilience grants for recovery, and we're just scoping that information up as to what that will look like, and I will send that to all elected members so that you can promote it amongst your community groups.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Kunze, did you have a question?
Yes, I did, Mr. Mayor. Through you, happy to take this on notice, but in regard to the projects to be carried forward, are you able to provide information on the geothermal renewal at Riverton Leisureplus? For the life of me, I can't remember anything about it. Thanks.
Director, Riverton Leisureplus, did you hear the question?
Well, sorry, there was a payment on here for...
Carry forward project.
Oh, carry forward project. Yeah, I'll take that one on notice.
We'll take that on notice. Thank you very much. Councillor Barry? Microphone.
Similar question on the geothermal. I was just wondering why. Also, now two down. I mean, we've got purchase lot 201 7 Oak Street. That's carried forward again. The other question that I had in relation to it, it's down for 1.3 million. That goes back like 2 years. Is that still the price that we're going to pay for that, or are we able to renegotiate on that at all?
Director?
That's one question.
No, that's currently still the price that we're paying for it.
Yeah.
Councillor Barry?
And the second one down, purchase of lot 300 Wellsborough Road. Well, I think we've already purchased that. I'm just wondering why that's written up like that. And we're in the throes of trying to sell it. Is that correct?
Yeah, so sorry, that was what the project was titled, was the purchase of 300 Wellsborough Road. It was in the budget this year for sale of that lot. As was presented in the budget workshop, that sale is likely to occur in the next financial year.
And just one last question. I think it's a perennial question. The 6 million plus the 10, these are basically carry forwards of jobs that we weren't able to start and or finish. Is that correct? From this
Director
financial,
Adams.
from the previous financial year?
So the carry forward projects are mentioned at the bottom of the page. The following projects we carried forward to 2021 financial year. This is as at 30th of June in terms of the financial dollars that have been allocated and paid against these projects. It's not, I wouldn't take this as being the full set of carryovers, because obviously work's been done that hasn't been paid for yet, and so when we come to looking at the carryovers, that'll take into account all the work that's been finalised and paid for as part of the end of year financial adjustments. So no, this doesn't constitute all the carryover amounts.
So the question then is that $16 million, that is still, as of today, represented in our investments, etc. Is that correct?
So yeah, some of it will be. whether it's all in the investments, I can't tell you exactly whether it is, but I guess it's represented in the fact that we'll have a corresponding amount of money that hasn't been expended on those projects yet. So whether it sits in the reserves, or whether it which are invested, or whether some of it's coming out of municipal, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But the investments are just a statement of the amounts that we have invested at certain points in time, not reflective of, so it's not all tied together, because some of this would be coming from municipal funding.
Thank you.
The question there is that we do see the municipal funds as X amount of dollars. This 16 million is not sitting outside of our investments, is it? So, I mean, we've got $40 million invested. Does that mean we may have 56, or 16 is part of the 40?
Director.
I'll get the finance team to give you a breakdown of how it all.
Okay, thank you.
One other question, sorry. I should have spoke to you when I was speaking earlier this afternoon, but I read these late. Page 25, 12361, Cleanaway, $146,000. Can we have some sort of idea what that was for, please?
Yeah, I'll take that on notice, Mr Mayor.
We'll take that on notice. Thank you very much. Councillors, we'll move to SD item 7.3. This is the Directorate of Canning Sustainable Development. The responsible officer is Mr Graham Bride. We're moving on to SD 014 of 20. The title of the report is City Centre Activity Centre Plan, Amendment 1, Public Advertisement. The recommendation is on page 27 of tonight's report in the agenda. Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just through you, Mr Mayor, to Director Bride, I did send him, we had a phone conversation, sorry, in relation to CCTV possibility that we could make a submission in relation to the city centre and the Queen's Park local area plan as to maybe being able to get CCTV as part of the design review panel, or whichever way you look at it. But if you can just give us a brief explanation as to what, you did send that off to the other elected members, and I thank you for that.
Yes, Director Bride, just in brief.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, certainly we had a look at that particular issue. We looked at the State Planning Policy 7.3 and also looked at other activity centre plans, and we didn't find any identification of any policy provisions or requirements for private developers to put onto their buildings CCTV to surveil the public realm. As per the email that I sent to all elected members, from my perspective, there's a number of tests of validity in terms of putting a planning condition on a development approval, and I just can't see that requiring a private landowner to put CCTV on the building directed to the public realm to surveil the city streets would meet that validity test in terms of the issue of, how has the development required the need for that infrastructure to be installed? It's very clear if you have an upgrade to a road or a footpath, the development will generate more traffic, more pedestrian flow. It's very easy to validate that condition, but certainly getting the developer to put on to its own building CCTV to surveil the public realm would be a stretch in relation to that validity test. So I don't think that would, pass any legal assessment.
Any other questions, Councillor Barry?
Yes, and just from that perspective, I think when we did speak, I was not speaking so much about the public realm from the building. It was more the common areas of the building. So if we take that into account, the other one, and they're both the same, aren't they, Queen's Park? Because on page 41 on E, it says all requirements for crime prevention through environmental design. Now, I had a look at 7.33 and I couldn't find anything from the state perspective that covered crime prevention.
I think you might have jumped the shark there. You're now talking about STO 1520?
They're both
Oh,
the same, Mr Mayor.
They're both what?
They're both the same. It's just that I'm looking on that page to relate back to Director Bright. Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, you have confused me because we're dealing with 01420,
Yes,
which is different plan. Can we just deal with them one at a time?
Well, I assume one of them are the same, aren't they?
Well, if we've got no further questions on 014 of 20, which is the city centre activity plan, we will certainly move straight on to Queen's Park local structure plan.
Okay, well, if do you want me to just keep standing and ask the
You
same
can just stand there if you like.
Okay.
I'm quite happy for you to do that. I just want to finish one off before we move on.
Just from that perspective.
Hang on, just before you start on that, have we got any other questions in relation to SDO 1420, which is the city centre activity centre plan? No? Thank you very much, councillors. Yes, we'll move on to SDO 1520. Go right ahead, Councillor Barry, Queen's Park.
From the crime prevention point of 7.33.
Director Bright.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, there is a fair bit on crime prevention through environmental design, and the whole, I guess, perspective of that, those design principles are by changing or manipulating the physical environment, the way you design things, sight lines, openings, you know, when you have a lobby to a building, is it wide? Do the elevator shafts come off that lobby, or are they located around a blind spot? So there's a whole range of considerations in that statement of planning policy 7.3, even looking at the height of landscaping, so people potentially can't hide behind vegetation. So there's a number of principles all through that document that attempt to ensure that you don't need, well, that the need for CCTV or other artificial means is not required, because you've designed into the built form ways to improve or reduce the opportunity for crime.
Councillor Barry?
And the last one, was it called the Newton's principle or something?
Are you familiar with the Newton's principles, Director Bright?
Through Mr Mayor, the Newbury's principles. Yep. So there was a court case which was, I think it was in the 1980s, and it has been confirmed through the High Court in the early 2000s that related back to that issue of a planning condition.
Yes.
So, you know, for a planning condition to be valid, there's 4 different limbs. You know, it must not be imposed for an ulterior purpose. It should relate to planning and not matters covered by other legislation. Must not be beyond the power of the decision maker, and must reasonably relate to the development being applied for. So you can't, I guess, you can't put on a planning approval opportunistic conditions that don't relate to what the development is proposing.
Well, just in relation to that, that principle on 3 of mine, there's not 4, but there is probably 4, but it says a condition must not be so unreasonable that no reasonable planning authority could have imposed it. Do we consider that very unreasonable as a local government?
Are we talking about the CCTV?
Yeah.
Yes, my view is it would be unreasonable to require private landowners to, at their cost, surveil the public realm in the city of Canning.
And just one last question, it's a bit hypothetical, and you've taken a notice if you wish. Do we know of any other local governments that have done that with high-rise apartment? Thank you.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, we did do a check of state planning policy 7.3, went through that, nothing in relation to CCTV at all. We had a look at several activity centre plans that have been adopted in the last couple of years, and most of the strategic metropolitan centres, there's 10 of them, and Cannington is one of them, have an activity centre plan, and all of them focus on that crime prevention through environmental design. They don't go into the realm of CCTV in any way, shape or form.
Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to ST 016 of 20, which is a Metronet Inner Armidale Line level crossing removals. The recommendation for you all is on page 49 of tonight's agenda and is now also on the screen. Do we have any questions in relation to that? Nothing. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on. Councillor Kunza.
Apologies. Just in regard to the submission, it's great submission. and puts our point across very well. I just had a question in terms of how we put forward the proposed retention of Welshpool Station, which we're advocating for. However, basically, I just wondered whether or not we should actually advocate for it by putting all those points. We're basically advocating for the future or the capacity to retain it and provide a station in the future. I'm just wondering why we won't use all those points to advocate for its retention now. And the way it's written, it just seems as though we're consigned to the fact that it will disappear, but we want to make sure that it's got capacity to be built in the future, given that governments don't normally come back and retrospectively build infrastructure. I just wondered if we should be more powerful by using all those points to advocate for its retention now, and then at the end of it say, however, if it's not retained, that we argue for the capacity.
Director Bright, are you able to answer that question, or would prefer Mr. Britz to?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that initially, and if Mr. Britz wants to add on, more than happy to for Etienne to come forward. Yeah, certainly, well, the position that we're putting to council is that we retain the Welshpool train station. We acknowledge that the number of boardings is quite considerably low at that station. It's sitting right, I guess, in the middle of or the edge of an industrial precinct. Opportunities to increase density at this stage are unlikely to occur really in the next 20 to 30 years. There is a Albany Highway corridor through our new local town planning scheme, which is going to increase density in some part of the walkable catchment. But I think we can all see that in the future there will be definitely a planning need, and Metronet have confirmed that they are doing an analysis of Welshpool Road, Welshpool Station. Due to that fact, they acknowledge that whilst it may not generate the number of boardings at the moment, they also identified that a number of the users of that particular station come from the City of Kalamunda area, who will now have an opportunity to use the Forestfield train station. So they actually believe that the upgraded infrastructure in other stations will reduce the need even further. So you're right, we are advocating. We don't want to see any train station in the City of Canning close. We acknowledge there are low boardings. What we'd like to see, if the station can't be retained, is that future proofing, and that's something they have committed to thus far. Certainly, if you believe that there should be a stronger push in that location, I'm happy to work with you in relation to that.
Thank you. I think I had Councillor Bain. You're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I noted in the the city's draft submission to Metronet, there were no opportunities discussed in regard to the removal of Gerard Street Bridge. Is the city able to expand on any opportunities that the removal of the bridge may bring about to the community and the general landscape in the area, and also the benefits of Sevenoaks Street connecting to Albany Highway and the benefits of that as well, please? Thank you.
Director Bright.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. Obviously, we did have a change of options that the state government issued, which I did circulate to councils on Friday. So we will be updating the submission definitely to cover off on the extension of Sevenoaks Street through to Albany Highway. That's been a long-held strategic position by the city, and it's also under the Metropolitan Region scheme that Sevenoaks Street should continue on to Albany Highway to the south of William Street. The City of Gosnells have got a completely different view on that. But certainly from a city centre perspective, you're looking at it from a district position, it does make a lot of sense to continue Sevenoaks, which we've dual carriaged for a considerable amount of the proportion of Sevenoaks in our particular patch. In terms of Gerard Street, certainly our position would be, you would have noted that the state government has introduced a new option 3, which does look at removing the Hamilton Street road over rail option to an elevated rail. So that has been an addition which was through the lobbying and advocacy by the city thus far. Certainly Gerard Street and a brand new Cannington train station, as per our submission, we do talk about the Cannington station being upgraded. And in order to upgrade Cannington train station, the Gerard Street Bridge needs to be removed, and Sevenoaks Street will be brought back to ground level. So certainly, the ideal, it would make sense if Cannington train station and Gerard Street undergrounding was also part of the package. I think we've done well to get Hamilton Street and the Queen's Park train station now as the preferred option. Pushing it further, we have discussed that in the submission, but I might ask Mr. Bozich, Troy Bozich, who's helped us with that, to just maybe talk a bit more about the Gerard Street option.
Mr. Bozich.
Yes, through the Mayor, I don't know whether there's much more I can add to that, but I think it would be a far better outcome if Gerard Street was brought back down to ground level, and it would be similar to the intersection would be similar to what we've got at Sevenoaks Street and Wharf Street. And we'll have to address the access of Railway Parade and how you get to Gerard Street as well.
Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in addition to that, I dare say it would probably require, excuse me, a fair deal of foresight, but would you also consider connecting Station Street? So you'd open up and connect Queen's Park, East Cannington and Cannington.
Mr. Bozich.
Through the Mayor, so that's Station Street across the railway line?
Should the rail over road option be successful, yes.
Yeah. So just through the Mayor, yeah, if we get elevated rail along that whole length of, through the City of Canning, we can look at numerous links to Sevenoaks Street. We just have to keep in mind that Sevenoaks Street is a blue road, so it will need to be endorsed by the Department of Planning. And we've got to be careful that we don't want too many intersections on Sevenoaks Street where you'll have additional sets of signals all the time. Like if you brought Sevenoaks Station Street across the railway line or across Sevenoaks Street to Railway Parade, there may be a need for another set of signals there. And I think that's the last thing we want to do, is have numerous, or more than what we anticipate we'll have along that length of Sevenoaks Street between Welshpool Road and Albany Highway if it does go through the City of Gosnells.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Metronet, when they came to us I think a few weeks ago, my memory was that they had a package and it included William Street. Now, William Street is technically a few hundred metres or so outside our patch. So we're not mentioning it here, but is that a mistake in the sense that it's a grander strategy? If we want to sort of connect Sevenoaks to go all the way down, I know William Street is not technically in our area, but I know a lot of residents on either side of that railway that actually live in the City of Canning actually use that. So is that something that we've overlooked simply because it's not in our area, or can we still have a position on it even though it's not in our area, but it's very close to our area?
Yes, through the Mayor, in our revised submission, we do comment on that. The plans that we saw earlier showed William Street with rail over William, and they had a cross intersection there, so we assumed that they would accommodate the Sevenoaks Street link all the way through to Albany Highway. But Graham's been at a meeting where we've heard back from Gosnells that they don't want that link through. So we'll definitely include that in our submission, and it will be one of the recommendations that we advocate for that link through to Albany Highway.
Yep. And do we have a position on William Street? Because is that something that we're going to have? We obviously it's not in our area, but obviously for that link, do we mention that we support that overpass there, so we can, or overpass of rail, so we can get from one side to the other side of the city?
Yes, through the Mayor, yes, we do support that, and the intersection of Sevenoaks Street and William Street would be similar to what we've got at Wharf Street at the moment.
Okay, thank you, councillors. We will move on. Thank you very much, Mr. Bozich. Very much appreciated. We'll move on to EN 016 of 20, the request for the renaming of Riverton Pavilion. That report sits on page 67 of tonight's agenda and is on the screen now. Any questions, councillors, before we move on? No questions? Thank you. We will move on to EN 017 of 20, Sustainability and Environment Advisory Group unconfirmed minutes for May. Are there any questions in relation to that item? There are none. Thank you. Councillors, we move to notices of motion for consideration at the next ordinary council meeting at item 8, of which there are none. Urgent business at item 9, there are none. Confidential matters. I thank members of the public for their attendance tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a number of confidential matters tonight that we need to deal with as a council behind closed doors. Thank you very much for attending tonight and for your patience and for being part of tonight's public meeting. Thank you. Righto, thank you very much, councillors. In the absence of any other questions, I'd like to wind up. We'll see you on Thursday evening for our budget workshop. I now declare the agenda briefing closed. The time now is 8:25 p.m. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the staff that stayed behind. Thank you, governance.